Well, hello there. Thank you for joining my channel today. I hope everyone is doing well. This is the Facts on JW channel, and today I'm going to be interviewing a former anointed elder. It's rare that we ever get a chance to hear from a anointed one. Usually they stay in. So we're going to listen to Daniel's story today, and he wrote a book as well called Believing the Lie. So I will put that in the description below, so you can get your copy on Amazon. So let's listen to his story. It's very good. Today we have Daniel with us, and he is going to tell us, you're going to tell us your story of how far back you go with the religion, and then what made you start to question, and what led you out, what made you wake up.
Okay, well, nice to be on your show, Casey. Thanks for inviting us.
You're welcome.
So I was born in to Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm 55 now, so I've had quite a long time in. The last time I left was I was 50 years old, so I've been out 5 years this time around. Um, I say this time around because I've been out twice. Been disfellowshipped twice. The first time I actually went back. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Third generation born in. My it goes back to my granddad in the 1930s. He became a Jehovah's Witness, and he was one of the so-called anointed. So he was quite a well-known brother back in the day in the 1930s. My dad was raised as a witness. My mum was also raised as a witness. Her dad uh, was not a witness. Only her mum was a witness. And it turns out actually that my dad's dad and mum actually studied with my mum's mum. That's how my mum's mum became a witness. Um, and they never knew that until they got married, and then they found out that the parents had studied together.
Wow.
So that
Interesting.
was yeah, that's kind of how Jehovah's Witnesses came to be kind of in my family. My mum's dad did eventually become a witness after my nan died at an assembly. She died in the concluding song. It was the last one in the old Pink songbook. Keep your eyes on the prize, and she had a yeah. She literally, bless her, she killed over in that song, singing "Keep your eyes on the," and then she had a massive heart attack. So we always joked about that when she got a resurrection, which is what we used to believe, wasn't it? That she'd be resurrected, and the first thing she'd sing would be "Prize." So I remember that I was only five. That was sort of indelibly
I remember
marked on.
that song. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even now some of the old songs pop into my head. But yeah, I was raised by both sides of my family, my mum and my dad. Very devout Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, really put their heart and soul into it. My dad was an elder from the time he was 18. They didn't call them elders back then, but he was an elder from 18. They both regular pioneered, and that's kind of how I was raised. It was the truth, and I was fully into it. I did have a little bit of a setback growing up. I actually had at school. This wasn't within the organisation, but I was section teacher at school when I was 11, and that had a massive effect on my mental health. At the age of 11, I had a complete mental breakdown at 11. Um, And that sort of set me back a little bit, kind of age regressed me, I think, a little bit. I did recover-ish my mental health around about the age of 14. Um, but I didn't get baptized until I was 16, which still seems quite young, but I think if I hadn't have had those setbacks, I'd have probably got baptized a bit earlier. 16, went into straight away into auxiliary pioneering because that's just what you did back then.
Mhm.
And within 6 months, I was a regular pioneer, and I remained a regular pioneer pretty much for most of my adult life. I was a regular pioneer when I was disfellowship 5 years ago, when I was 50. There was a few occasions where I came off regular pioneering, mostly again because of mental health issues. I did struggle a lot with depression over the years. But pioneering was kind of the thing, just the thing I did. I was known as a regular pioneer. And of course, as a man in the organization, I went through all the stages of, became a ministerial servant in my early 20s, and an elder by the time I was 29. I think it was 29, 30. And then I was an elder for quite a few years, up to my first disfellowshipping, which was in 2006, I think it was, my first one. Got disfellowship for apostasy the first time, and I I don't think I was an apostate. Basically, what happened all my life, I'd always felt a little like I didn't really fit in with the whole JW thinking kind of thing. I was a very, very studious person right from really young, like from a kid, 4 years old, I was giving Bible readings, and I was a publisher at 4. And um, from the minute I got baptized at 16, I was really, really deep into the really deep spiritual stuff, the prophecies and all the dates, and 1914 and 1919, all that kind of thing. Um, so I was very, very studious. And what I actually found is the more studious I became, the more things I found that didn't fit, in terms of, not initially the Bible. I absolutely believed the Bible, and I believed in God and Jesus and everything, but just the things that the Watchtower was teaching, um, didn't really fit with what the Bible actually said. So I had a lot of questions. Now, growing up, my dad was very open about questions. I think this was in the past. People did ask questions, and we used to sit around just, debating about the Watchtower said this, but the Bible says that. Why do you think that is, kind of thing? And there never used to be an issue with that at all. Um, but things started shifting, I think, in early 2000s. You started getting a few funny looks if you questioned anything. And I think what drew attention to me particularly was, the more I read the Bible, the more I thought, you know what, if you're a Christian, um, that means Jesus is your head. No one would debate that, even within Jehovah's Witnesses. Jesus is your head. That means that you're part of Jesus' body, figuratively speaking. And everything that I read in the Bible said that if you're a Christian, you partake of the bread and wine. I couldn't see that there was like another hope, an earthly hope for Christians. So that was more of a conscience issue. I read that and I thought, well, if I love Jesus and I'm a Christian, which I was at the time, that's how I identified. I'm anointed. There wasn't sort of any. I know sometimes on Reddit there's a lot of people that say all the anointed are like, so-called anointed are barking mad, and they're sort of seeing visions and angels and all this sort of thing. It was never really like that with me. It was very much a Christian experience. And I started partaking of the emblems in 2002, 2004, 2005. And within a very short period of time, there was one particular elder that really took offense at that I was serving with. He was a bit of a bully. I don't know whether he was jealous or felt threatened or what, I don't know. But he basically got me disfellowship for apostasy. He went behind my back and asked my dad whether or not I'd ever spoken about anything that wasn't 100% in line with the Watchtower. And of course I had, because me and my dad used to have quite in-depth conversations about the Bible and spiritual things. And basically my dad blabbed on me. He said, yeah, Daniel Daniel talks about things that are not, official. And I ended up being invited to a judicial hearing that went on for 7 hours. I was only allowed to answer yes or no to some very loaded questions. Got disfellowshipped, appealed it. Appeal committee went on for another 7 hours. So within a week, I'd sat through 14 hours. And it was brutal, to be honest, Casey. It was I actually ended up having another mental breakdown in that hearing. It was I likened it at the time to being mentally raped. It was like it was absolutely awful. The elders basically so I was subjected to 8 different elders that were just questioning me. And it was a kangaroo court. The brother that was leading the whole thing, all the other 7 were all mates of his. So it was so I got disfellowship for 3 years.
And mostly it was because you partook of the emblems and they started to wonder why, and that's kind of what started it.
Yeah, and it was like I was put under a lot of scrutiny as to why I did that. So I mean, one of the questions was I got cornered in the Kingdom Hall at one meeting by one of the elders who said, "So you reckon you're one of the faithful and discreet slave, do you?" Now,
Huh.
I didn't. I felt I was anointed and I was a Christian, but when you read the biblical account of the faithful and discreet slave, it's the master, Jesus, who proclaims the person as being faithful and discreet when he comes, when he arrives, if they've been faithful and if they've been discreet. So I sort of felt it was quite presumptuous to say, "Oh yeah, I'm faithful and discreet." So my answer was, "Well, no, the jury's out on that at the moment." Um,
When you were disfellowship for 3 years, did you
hmm.
go back to the meetings
Oh yeah.
full time?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't agree with a lot of the teachings, and I didn't feel comfortable with referring to it as the truth, because at the time felt I was a born again Christian, so Jesus was the truth, not an organization. But I also felt like if there was any organization on earth that God was using, it was probably this one. And I also felt I kind of had almost an obligation to be there, not just for family, but as someone who was anointed, I should be there to. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe some sort of reform from the inside out or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I kept going to all the meetings. I took my wife and children, who I had at the time, to the meetings. Never missed a meeting, and I carried that on for 3 years. Saying, I'm not an apostate. I'm not out to bring the Watchtower down. Um, Quite the opposite, actually. Um, and then after 3 years, the elder that had orchestrated me getting disfellowship, he actually was found out to be up to no good himself. He'd been doing some pretty dodgy stuff. Got removed as an elder, and I actually got a phone call from an elder that was in touch with Bethel, and he said, "Can you give Bethel a ring? They're waiting for your call." This was in 2009, and I rang Bethel up and I said, "Hi, my name's Daniel. You've got me down as an apostate, so you probably won't want to speak to me." And the guy that answered the phone, it was actually somebody that knew my granddad from many years ago, and he went, "Oh, Daniel, yeah, we've been waiting for your call. Um, can you meet with 3 elders next week?" And I was like, yeah, yeah. And went to meet with three elders. And within, oh God, probably within about 3 weeks, I'd been reinstated.
Oh.
So yeah. So like,
Hmm.
on the Wednesday I was a an evil apostate that no one wanted to talk to. And on the Thursday, I was reinstated. Within 6 months, I was regular pioneering again.
Wow.
I
Dang.
know, yeah. The problem was I had been through that experience, and over that 3 years, it had opened my eyes a lot, and I had done a lot more research on the organization, and I did have a lot of concerns about the way that things were going. The child abuse issues was starting to become quite a big thing. The cover-ups that were going on there. Um, I started to get very worried when the governing body turned around and said, "We're the faithful and discreet slave, and
Hmm.
nobody else is." That started to worry me. And then when they started doing the JW broadcasting and basically sort of coming across as TV evangelists with their ego, I was like, "This is starting to get very idolatrous." So I had a lot of worries in terms of like, I don't know as I really want to be a part of this, but all my family's in it. And if I get disfellowshipped or leave again, I'm probably going to lose them for good this time. So I stuck around for another 10 years. Hmm.
Okay. Wow. And were you ever able to share any of your what you found out with your wife, kids, like back?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I did share things with my wife, and I did share things with my kids, but I had to be very, very discreet. Two of my children actually did disassociate.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, they woke up and they left,
Mhm.
which put me in a very tricky situation because I still had two children at home and I still had an aging father. My mother had died by that point, and we were looking after my dad. And I really regret this at the time, but I took the decision to remain a witness, and carry on looking after the two children that I had at home that were younger at the time. They weren't adults at the time, and my aging father. And to all intents and purposes, I had really no contact with my adult children that had disassociated and left and gone. I really regret that now. Um, I wish I'd had the courage to say I'm not playing this game anymore, but
Are they still out of the religion?
they are, and understandably, they're very angry. As far as I can tell, they're very angry, and because I didn't support them at the time when they left, um, they have nothing to do with me. So I'm effectively being shunned by the two that left, which I get. They're really disappointed in me because I didn't support them when they left the witnesses. The other two, of course, are staunch Jehovah's Witnesses. They're adults now, and young adults, and they shun me because I've left.
And
So
and,
I'm being shunned from both angles.
and the mother, their mother is still in too.
No, no, she left as she left as well. That was quite funny actually because she this let's I don't want to bad mouth my ex. We weren't I didn't feel we were happily married. I never actually felt in love with my wife. We married very young. For the reason that most witnesses marry. They basically want to be intimate with somebody and you can't before you get married. We got married very, very young, and I think she was only like just 19 when we got married. She eventually said that she didn't love me either. The only reason that she married me is she didn't want to live at home with her quite abusive father. So there wasn't really a great reason to be married, and that kind of showed throughout the marriage. The intimacy wasn't really there, and the love wasn't really there, and I was very depressed for most of my marriage. not just purely because of the marriage, but also because of the cognitive dissonance I was dealing with, knowing that I didn't really believe all this sort of stuff. The second time, I actually got disfellowship for doing the deed.
But
So
did
I
you,
committed adultery.
yeah. And your wife at the time was still believing in it,
Yeah,
essentially?
yeah. Again, this is something that I really, really regret because I've always prided myself on being honest and integrity and all the rest of it. The level of cognitive dissonance and the unhappiness that I was in basically led me to, I wouldn't say it was fully orchestrated, but when the opportunity came along, I saw an opportunity to get out of my marriage and I took it. Had a relationship with somebody. I say adultery. Again, I'm trying not to minimalize things. It wasn't actually full on adultery. I don't want to get into all the details there, but we did enough to give my wife a scriptural reason for divorce. I basically handed her a divorce on a plate and said, I've been unfaithful. You can divorce me now. And she was quite happy to do that,
Yeah.
And at the time, I mean, she didn't say she was happy. She was very angry at me, and she said, I'm worshiping my God Jehovah, and you're a disgrace, and all the rest of it. After the fact, after we were divorced, she actually disassociated herself. And said she'd not believed it for years and years and years, and she'd never loved me, and it was all just a so yeah, a lot of lies, a lot of deceit, a lot of things that didn't look the way they are. We're not in touch with each other now, just purely because I don't like her, if I'm
And
honest.
well, so does that mean the two older kids are talking to her?
I've no idea.
And how
I,
about the
I, I,
younger two? Did
no, the young, no, no, actually, now that's interesting because when I left, the two youngest ones, the JW ones, were still at home with her. When she disassociated, they actually stopped talking to her
they?
in the home. They started shunning her at home because that's what we taught them. We taught them to shun people if they're disassociated or disfellowship. So they started shunning her. Her family started shunning her, and in fact, the children actually went to live with their grandparents.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So the grandparents swooped in and said, "Oh, you come and live with us because we're spiritual." And eventually, I don't know, to be honest, Casey, because like I said, I'm not really in touch with my ex anymore. We just don't have anything in common, and we're not even friends.
And what was it that woke you up? What was it woke her up? I know about I guess the Australian Royal Commission and all of the CSA problems.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even think it was that. I think for me, it was doctrinal issues the first time around. The second time around, it's just that I was dead unhappy and didn't want to be married anymore to the person I was married to. Um, and I know that looks terrible, and there's things that I regret about that. I'm quite remorseful about that, but that is the facts of it. For her, I honestly don't know. I don't know if she was ever really very spiritual. She was always a pioneer, and she always like came across as, oh, I'm really super spiritual. But I don't know. I just always got the feeling it was a bit of an act. And then after our marriage broke up and the children, she just, I don't think she got the support that she expected to get from the congregation when our marriage broke up. Um, and I think she just realized in the end she doesn't believe it. She just didn't. She never believed it. She just decided that's it. I'm done. I'm leaving. So,
She
and
believed,
our lives have gone completely separate directions now.
and she believed it enough to teach the kids.
Well, again, do you believe it though? This is the thing. I didn't believe it, but I taught my kids.
Huh.
You know, it's like I think sometimes there's an awful lot of rationalizing, and there's an awful lot of it's a lie, and you don't believe it. But at the same time, it's almost like mentally, and I don't know if this is just me or other people have been through this as well. You almost want it to be true, And so you go about your life as if it is true, and you teach everyone it's true. And you just think, if I say it's true enough,
Yeah.
it'll be true. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is horrendous. If it's not true, I'm going to lose all my family, and I've got no hope for the future, and I'm going to die at Armageddon or whatever, you know. Um,
That makes sense.
but
Yeah.
there was an awful lot of rationalizing, and like I say, it screws with your mental health, and you just, for me, I found my honesty and integrity, what little I had, was just totally destroyed in the end, and
Yeah.
I wasn't the kind of person I wanted to be. So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, at least you were smart enough to realize that, because a lot of people will are fully in, like mentally in, they wouldn't question
Mm.
anything. And I think it takes a smarter person to question their beliefs, you know.
Yeah. I often wish I'd been more courageous about it. I wish I could have said, look, I don't believe this. I'm walking away. Yeah, even with my marriage, I wish I'd been more courageous to be able to say, look, I don't love you, and I don't think you love me. Let's walk away.
Yeah.
But again, I've also kind of forgiven myself to a degree with that, because I think people that have been in cults should have a degree of self-forgiveness, because when you're in a cult, you're not thinking straight. You're really not. Everything that you do is through the lens and the filter of being in a cult. So, give yourself a bit of slack after the fact when you look back and you think, oh, I made some really bad choices. Doesn't necessarily mean you're the world's worst person. It could just be that, there was a good person in there that was being manipulated and suppressed, and that's what I think. People may agree or not.
I think you're right. I mean, you can't make the best decisions when you have that lens on. And I mean, I think about myself too, and like, oh, I wish I had done this or that, but you can't
Right, yeah.
really think it through clearly when you're in that type of mind control.
You can't, and it's a funny thing, because when you're in, you think you're sane. You really do. You think you're sane, and this is reality, and this is how things are done. When you're properly out, like the first time, I wasn't really properly out. I still had a foot in the door where I was going to meetings and trying to make it true, even though I knew it wasn't. When you make an absolute clean break and you walk away for good, and you say, I'm never setting foot in a Kingdom Hall again. I'm not going to keep reading the literature. This is it. I'm done. It's amazing how quickly your mental health improves,
Yeah.
and you start thinking, like, was I absolutely mad at the time? You weren't. You were just being controlled by a cult. But after the fact, you can look back and it just seems like a blur. Um, like you definitely, when I was in, I was definitely deluded. Um, Definitely deluded with the things that I believed and thought. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, well, I hope that you are living a much the best life ever, as they say, right? Jehovah's Witness.
I am. I am now. I'm very, very happy.
Now that you're out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very, very happy. I'm remarried. I've emigrated from the UK to Australia. I've married another ex-Jehovah's Witness who also left.
Wow.
Yeah, we're married. Very, very happy. Mental health is absolutely fantastic now, to the point where I'm able to help others now. I've restarted my life coaching business. I've got a free course that's out there if anyone wants to check it out. That's based on life coaching that helps ex-witnesses to heal and rebuild. It's called flaxandwick.org. It's also on YouTube if you want to check that out. So mental health is great. I'm back to being able to help people again. Very creative. Can I mention my book?
Absolutely.
I wrote a book. There it is. Believe in the Light by Daniel Tyron. That's me. There. That's a big old book. It's got my life story in. what I went through, how I managed to get out of the cult, particularly how I managed to rebuild after leaving the cult, and also how I managed to deconstruct as well, because I'm not even a Christian anymore.
Mhm.
I've moved on from that. Um, I'd say I'm fairly spiritual still, as you can probably see from the backdrop.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, very happy. I'm working, um, doing web design, and I'm creative. I'm writing books. I'm writing poetry. I'm writing songs. Got great friends.
Oh,
Really, really, really good friends. The only thing I don't have in my life is my dad and my children.
yeah. Well, your dad's passed, right?
No, no, he's still alive. I
Oh,
think. I don't know how I'd find out if he wasn't. But yeah, he's 86, I think.
okay.
Still an elder, still a regular pioneer.
Yeah. Well, I hope that your older two kids that disassociated will maybe one day come to their senses because life's too short to hold a grudge.
I think so. Yeah, I think it would be very nice if I have asked for forgiveness and I have apologized and I have sort of pointed out that, you know, to all intents and purposes, I'm not acting the same way as I did when I was a JW. Life is different now, but it's their prerogative, isn't it? If they don't want to forgive, that's on them. But
True.
no, life is pretty good.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Well, good. I'm glad you were able to overcome that, and you even wrote a book about it. So I'll make sure and put that in the description so that people can maybe go get a copy. Where do you sell it? Amazon?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon. It's called Believing the Lie by Daniel Torridon. That's me. A story of cognitive dissonance. That's because so many people struggle with it. Can I just mention as well, if we've just got a little bit of time at the end there, I'm also quite heavily involved with an organisation that I know you are as well. You did an interview the other day with Patrick Hake
Yes.
of the Open Minds Foundation, which is the charity that is behind the Stop Mandated Shunning campaign.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
they basically brought me on board. What is it now? Probably about a year, 18 months ago, to sort of revamp things and get things up and running. So from the technical side of things, because that's my sort of area. So we've put together a new website for them. Um, and it may only be temporary. I'm currently hosting the Stop Mandated Shunning YouTube channel, along with someone else, a lady called Monica, that did a lot of coverage over the Norway trials recently. I'd urge anyone to go and get behind the Stop Mandated Shunning campaign. Basically, there's a massive drive at the moment to get research done, um, official research through the Roehampton University in the UK. And it's a 3-year project. And it's basically going to get the very much needed evidence together to win court cases to show that mandated shunning, is a violation of human rights. So if you head over to stopmandatedshunning.org, that gives you all the information as to how you can get behind it, whether it's getting involved in the survey or telling your story, or if you've got a bit of spare change, you can make a donation over there as well, which is very good.
Okay. Yeah. I actually did mention that in my last video. I think
Yeah.
I put it in the description, but I'll do
Mm.
it again. So because you need as many people as possible to come forward to support.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the more people that can tell their stories and the more people can actually take the official survey and say, look, yeah, I'm being mandated, mandated shunning is affecting me. And you don't have to just be a Jehovah's Witness. It's not just Jehovah's Witnesses that do this.
Right.
It's Orthodox Jews, it's Scientology, it's the Baha'i faith. There's lots of groups that do this.
Yes.
And if we can get the data together, what happened in the recent Norway appeal, where at the moment it's gone the JW advantage, but I'm not so sure it's over yet. If
Yeah.
we can get the actual evidence they need together, there's a good chance that we can win some of these court cases moving forward.
That sounds great. Hopefully,
Mm.
more people will come forward of all kinds of different high control groups that
Right.
are mandating shunning. There's,
Yeah.
like you say, there's several. Uh,
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses are
So
just one of many.
just one, and just I would just say, just for anyone that's watching this at the moment, however bleak things might seem at the moment, and trust me, I've been there. I've been there. 5 years ago, I was on my knees, lost everything, suicidal. Um, However bleak it looks, yeah, don't give up. People told me 5 years ago it will get better, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't believe it. I thought, no, this is it. And my life sucks now. But you can heal and you can rebuild, and there are ways to do that, and there is support there to help you. The teaching that 1914 was when Jesus' presence began. But it kind of had a little bit of a snowball effect from that. My actual hang up actually became the 1918, 1919 teaching, and that's primarily why I ended up getting this fellowship the first time. I'll tell you what my reasoning was at the time. I'd been brought up to believe, I'd been taught that 1914 was a significant date in human history, as all Jehovah's Witnesses are. Um, I From a very young age, I took great delight in being able to explain scripturally is it the seven times of Daniel? Remember the 2,520 uh, years that ran from the fall of Jerusalem in 607, presumably. And I thought that was solid. I used to walk around the territory as a young pioneer, telling everybody end of the world's coming, and 1914 was the last days, and the people that were alive in 1914, they're going to be dead. Sorry, they're still going to be alive by the time Armageddon comes. Um, and of course, it was all wrong. And we know it was all wrong now, but at the time, it seemed very real. Um, Around about 2004, 2003-ish, I started doing quite a deep dive into the whole 1914 thing. And what I discovered pretty shocked me actually to the core. What I did is I was a collector of the old Watchtower publications, and I actually had all of the hard copy publications going all the way back to the 1800s. So I had all the early watchtowers. I had all of the studies in the scriptures, which were Charles Taze Russell's initial writings. And I also had other writings as well, stuff that he'd written with N.H. Barber. Um, I had a book of articles that Charles Taze Russell had written for a local newspaper as well, that was very interesting. And I was lapping it up. I was just reading all the old stuff. And I was surprised to find out, first of all, that they believed that the last days actually began in 1799 or something like that, with the round about the time of Napoleon. The idea that the last days started in 1914 was actually quite a late addition to things. So that was the first thing. The other thing that I discovered was that I actually believed Jesus had already returned in 1874. Um, and they believed that all the way up to 1929.
Hmm.
So when people say, oh, they were prophesying that Jesus was going to return in 1914, well ahead of time, that's absolutely not true at all. If you read the books, they weren't saying he was coming back in 1914. They were saying he'd already come back in 1874. The 1914 teaching was that the Gentile times would end in 1914, and that would signal Armageddon. That's what they were prophesying, that Armageddon would come in 1914. Um, all you need to do is get the old books and read them, and you suddenly start, hang on a minute, what we're told that they were teaching is not what they were teaching at the time. So that was the first thing that got me thinking. And when brothers and sisters would say, "Oh, we must have the truth," because for many years they were prophesying that Jesus would come back in 1914, I'd say, "Well, no, actually, that's not what they were teaching." And it says so here. Look, this is what they were actually teaching. Um, didn't really go down very well. You can understand.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's really smart that you realize all that. But I guess that's the key is to read
It's about reading. Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
the old literature.
yeah.
And they like to say that's old light, so they don't want to even use it anymore.
Well, yeah, and when I was disfellowshipped in 2006, one of the things that I was told was you shouldn't have read the old literature. I was, oh, okay, right, fair enough then. The other thing that got me was how they actually got to 1914. So we're told that they got to 1914 because they counted 2,500 and whatever it was, 2,520 years from 607. That isn't actually the case. They actually arrived at 1914 by measuring the pyramids.
Mhm.
So the big pyramid in Egypt, the Great Pyramid, I think it is. If you read the old literature, old Charles Taze Russell was well into his numerology, and he'd measured the pyramids, or someone had measured the pyramids, and he'd like crunched all the numbers, the lengths and sides, and how long the pyramids were, and he arrived at 1914. Fantastic, yeah. And then the way they got to the way they came up with the Jerusalem fell in 607. They counted back 2,520 years from a date they'd already got from the pyramids. So they actually went back to get the date 607 rather. Um, except at the time they forgot there was a year zero between AD and BC. So they actually came up with 606. So when you read all the literature, it says along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, it says we know 1914 is important because of the pyramids. And we know that Jerusalem fell in 607, 606 rather, because if you count back 2,520 years,
Mhm.
606. Then somebody pointed out, hang on a minute, we're a year out here because there's a year zero. Oh no. So we're going to have to change it to 607. That throws all the numbers out. So then what they did is they remeasured the pyramids and discovered that they'd miraculously grown by a few inches. That's and that's in the old books. We remeasured it. We got our numbers wrong the first time, but they're right now, and it still works. So when I was reading this sort of thing, I'm thinking this is just a load of guesswork.
Yeah.
They're just basically plucking numbers from the air and trying to make them fit into some sort of predetermined doctrine that they've created. And of course, when I started realizing that 1914 was fudged,
Mhm.
that has a massive knock-on effect because the reasoning goes Jesus came back in 1914, which they didn't start teaching that until 1929. Jesus came back in 1914. He inspected the organization in 1918 and found them faithful. He appointed the faithful and discreet slave in 1919. Yeah. And then because they're the faithful and discreet slave, they're allowed to say that Jerusalem fell in 607. It's circular reasoning.
Wow.
So
Craziness.
everything started to sort of fall apart a bit at this point. I'm thinking if 1914 is fudged, um, and the numbers are not right, that also means 1918 and 1919 are probably not right either. And this is why they can't actually change the 1914 date, or they've been very reluctant to, is because if they change 1914, the other dates fall apart.
Mhm.
Um,
That's true.
so that was sort of my initial kind of thinking. And then, of course, I hit the Bible. I thought, let's have a look what the Bible actually says about the fall of Jerusalem. Was it 607? And it's very clear when you read the. I've actually got a scripture here. Can I read you a verse?
Sure. Which Bible is it in?
Oh, it's this one. It's
Oh,
this one.
okay. The
I've still got my old Bible. Yeah.
New World Translation. Okay.
All right. So one of the things that they did was they said Jerusalem fell in 607, and then they count 70 years to 537, and they say that must be when the Israelites returned from Babylonia and rebuilt the temple in 537. 70 years. Yeah. They also say that Nebuchadnezzar was destroyed by the Medes, killed by the Medes and Persians in 539 when Babylon fell.
Mhm.
Now, we know from history that Babylon did actually fall in 539, so that's okay. What we don't know is when the Jews returned to their homeland. There's nothing that says it was 537. The only reason the Watchtower says 537 is they're counting 70 years from 607, which we've already established is determined from 1914 backwards, which was already determined from pyramids that have got these like sides that shrink and expand depending on what date you want.
Right.
So I'm thinking, all right, okay, so what does the Bible actually say about all this? There's a verse in Jeremiah 25, verse 12. And when you read it, it just jumps out the page. And you think, well, why didn't I ever see that as a Jehovah's Witness? It says, when the 70 years have been fulfilled, a lot of Bibles says when the 70 years have come to an end.
Mhm.
All right. When is that? According to Jehovah's Witnesses, it's 537. That's when the 70 years come to an end. That's when the Jews go back to their homeland. But the verse actually says, when 70 years have been fulfilled, when they've come to an end, I will call to account the king of Babylon and that nation for their error.
Mm.
That's back to front. Babylon fell in 539, 2 years earlier. The king of Babylon was called to account in 539. So what the Bible actually says is that the 70 years ends and then the king of Babylon is destroyed. Not the king of Babylon is destroyed and then 2 years later the 70 years ends.
Right.
It's just simple math and it's there in the scriptures, which means that the 70 years, whatever this 70 years is, ended with the fall of Babylon in 539. So if you're going to say this is 70 years of captivity by, in Babylon, you'd have to actually go back to 609, not 607. So even if that was the case, it's completely screwed up. But when you actually start reading the verses in a bit more detail, in verse 11, it says, all this land, that's Jerusalem, will be reduced to ruins and will become an object of horror. And then it doesn't say Jerusalem will serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. It says all these nations will serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. So the 70 years, according to scripture, is actually the period of time that Babylon was at its height, ruling over not just the Jews, ruling over everybody. And that actually does start from 609.
Wow.
Now, you could argue, Bible believers, of which I am not one now, would argue, oh, well, it's still prophecy.
Uh,
Um, when you do a little bit more digging, you find that Jeremiah and Daniel, all these books were actually written after the fact, during the time of the Medes and the Persians, or even into the Grecian era. Um, but even if you believe the Bible and you think this is prophecy, those verses are not what Jehovah's Witnesses teach. They'll obfuscate the verses that don't do them justice, and they'll highlight ones that do fit their doctrine. So that was kind of the thing that got me really. 1914 is wrong, 607 is wrong. Archaeology says it's 587 or 586 that Jerusalem fell.
yeah.
Um, and then as a result of that, my entire kind of numbers and prophecies and dates all came crashing down. 1918, 1919.
Mhm.
which all hang on 1914. That means what evidence is there that the governing body were ever appointed as the faithful slave? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think probably most ex Jehovah's Witnesses have probably had similar beliefs,
Mm.
like 1914, for example, not adding up. And most ex witnesses can definitely, I mean, it's not that hard to find research about the fall of Babylon and when that
It's
happened,
not.
too.
It's starting to get a little bit more difficult now to find the old publications because if you've noticed, the Watchtower started purging a lot of the old stuff that they've said from their website and that sort of thing, and trying to get hold of some of those old books that I had access to back in 2004. Very, very difficult now. Those books are extremely expensive, very, very rare, but it is all there. You can find those books in PDF copies and that kind of thing. The thing that actually ended up ultimately getting me kicked out the first time as an apostate was the teaching that the anointed that had died in the time of Jesus, the apostles and disciples and what have you, were all dead up to 1918. Um, and that in 1918 they were all resurrected to heaven. They call it the first resurrection of the anointed. And then they teach that when the anointed ones alive now that are anointed, when they die, they immediately go to heaven.
Yeah.
Um, when I read the Bible, I realized that was not actually the case at all, according to scripture. I think it's in memory serves me right because I don't read my Bible anymore. I think it's in
It's,
First Corinthians 15 or Second Corinthians 15, something like that. Let me just see if I can find it. Yeah,
okay.
First Corinthians 15, um, where it's talking about the resurrections. According to scripture, Jesus comes on the clouds uh, with an archangel's trumpet, and it basically, the scripture shows that all the people that are dead that are anointed are raised from the dead, and all the ones that are still alive are raptured, and they all go to heaven at the same time. That's what the scriptures teach. In other words, the first resurrection is a future event when Jesus comes back on the clouds just before Armageddon. Um, they'd always said that the first resurrection started after Jesus came invisibly in 1914. Um, but then a bit later, they changed things and they said that some of the verses where it talks about Jesus coming isn't talking about 1914, it's future. So they move the goalpost forward future. Well, if you do that, all that happens is everything you've attached to 1914, 1918, and so forth becomes a future event. Um, and I saw that the first thing when they changed some of those teachings was, hang on a minute, if you change the goalpost, that means that the resurrection is future. And I actually wrote to the governing body. There is actually a copy of all the letters I wrote to the governing body in my book, Believe in
Okay.
the Lie. Um, and I questioned all the dates and the 1914 and 1918 and 1919 and how scripturally it doesn't stack up. And I got a letter back. It was basically just a boilerplate letter saying, you're wrong. This is what we teach.
Wow.
Suck it up kind of thing.
Rutherford says from the year 539 AD brings us to 1799,
Yep.
which is marks the beginning of the time of the end.
Yep.
Shows that it is from the date 539 that the other prophetic days of Daniel must be counted. So that's what
Yep.
they were saying back then
That's right. Yeah.
with Rutherford.
Yeah. Yeah. 1799 was prophesied as the last days began in 1799. It was something to do with Napoleon and the revolution or something.
They
Um,
they
and
actually
then a bit,
got it from the Millerites.
Oh, they got it
that's correct.
right.
That is correct, mate. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the in my book, just plugging that again, it actually tracks how a lot of that early thinking actually came through the Millerites, and Barber, um, and George Stores was another guy that was very big on it. Um, there's actually a book that you may want to read if you've not read it before. It's by a minister called B.H. Shattuck.
Okay.
And he was around the time of Rutherford, and he actually called the Watchtower Society a cult.
Oh,
And
wow.
he called out Rutherford and Russell as cult leaders, and he totally demolishes their teachings on 1799 and 1874 and 1914. I've actually put together an expose again in the book on everything that Shattuck wrote. So that's a really good one
Sounds like
to
your
read.
book could be a good book for a lot of ex-witnesses or
Yeah,
witnesses that are currently questioning their beliefs. You've got a lot of good information in.
there's a huge amount of information in there. It is my story of how I was raised and how I exited the witnesses from a so-called anointed person's perspective. Um, but my story sort of weaves in and out the doctrine, um, and it goes right back to the Millerites and everything, and B.H. Shattuck, and yeah.
Oh,
But that's basically I questioned those teachings, particularly the one about the first resurrection. I wrote a letter to Bethel, got a boilerplate letter back. I showed it to my dad. My dad said, "Do you accept what they've said?" And I said, "Well, I accept it. I don't believe it. I think they're wrong. I've given them all the evidence. I've given them all the biblical evidence, because I was a Bible believer at the time." And when that elder that I've spoken about in our other video, when he came along and asked my dad, "Has Daniel ever said anything he shouldn't?" My dad basically said, "Yeah, yeah, he's written to Bethel, and they gave him an answer, and he doesn't believe it."
wow.
And that's basically what got me disfellowshipped. And when I was in the hearing, they were saying, like, "Do you believe it or don't you believe it?" And I said, "No, I don't believe it." I said, "I'll accept it because that's what you're teaching. Who am I? I don't know anything. But in my heart, no, I don't believe it. I think it's wrong. But I won't go around telling everyone it's wrong. Um, I'll just keep my mouth shut." But that wasn't good enough. I had to actually believe it.
Hmm.
Um, and when I said to them, "Could I show you why I don't believe it? Could I use my Bible to show you the reasons I don't believe what they're teaching?" I was told, "No, you're not allowed to use your Bible. This is not, you're not here to teach us anything or show us anything. Do you believe it or don't you believe it?" So I had to be honest and say, "Well, no, I don't believe it."
Yeah. Well, one thing that seems to be that the elders have in common, or just the organization in general, they're not interested in praying. Like Patrick said, they didn't want to pray.
Oh, they didn't pray with me.
Yeah. And they don't
Yeah, they, they
use
refused
the
to pray with me.
Bible. They want to use the watchtower to prove everything.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. I mean, one of the questions they asked, do you remember the old Daniel's book? The Daniel's, there was like a two-parter or something. Daniel's prophecy book. Can't even
Yeah,
remember what it's
I
called now.
have it.
Oh,
Daniel's.
you got that one, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had questions about that. I was reading bits in Daniel and I'm thinking, well, that's not how history played out at all. And I'd spoken about that to my dad. So one of the questions was they held up the Daniel's book in the judicial hearing and they said, "Do you believe every single word that's written in here is true?" And I was like, "Well, I I've got my doubts about certain things, but and they said any normal brother would just say yes.
Hmm.
The fact you've not said yes, the fact you've sort of hesitated, that means you're an apostate."
So what they meant to say was any nor mind controlled brother
Correct, correct.
would have said yes.
Yeah. And I was only allowed to answer yes or no to my questions, and it went on for 7 hours, and I was just wrecked at the end of it, and
That's exhausting and really
it
cruel to
was
do that to
it
people.
was really cruel.
Oh, we have this book too. Do you have that book?
I don't actually have any books now. I got rid of them all.
Oh no, because you
I
kind of
don't care
to
anymore.
have the old stuff just to be able to, I don't know, share it on YouTube.
Oh, I've done all that. I've done all that. I did all that. I put it all down in my book, and I'm not bothered anymore.
Okay.
Moved on.
Yeah.
I sold all my books on eBay, made a fortune, and I'll be honest now. Apart from my work with stop mandated shunning, which is very close to my heart, um, and occasionally something that Watchtower does will drag me out of my corner, and I'll go and make a video and call them out and say, "Hang on, what are you up to here? Beards, slacks, what's that all about?" But generally speaking, I don't honestly give a toss anymore. I've just,
You've moved on.
I have, I've got a great life now, and I don't care anymore. It's just, I care enough to try and help other people with the shunning side of things. And I honestly do think that I spent 5 years writing that. That is basically my last hurrah. I haven't really got a lot more to say beyond that. It's all in the book. So
Wow. So
yeah.
I guess that's what everybody needs to go out and get their book, get your book,
Well,
release.
yeah, either go out and get my book, or top tip for you, sit down and write a book. It's very therapeutic. It's very cathartic. Write a book, put it all behind you. Say everything you want to say. Say everything you want to say, and then you can kind of move on and have a brilliant life. Highly recommended.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's great. You question the doctrines fairly early on, really,
Hmm.
and it all comes back to these dates, not
It
adding
was
up.
for me it was all about dates. Even though I was an abuse survivor, to be honest, Casey, the child abuse side of things wasn't really a motivator at the time for me. Um, I'll be honest, if I was still a witness now, what I'm seeing happening, I couldn't stay now.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing now, I would have to leave just out of conscience. But back then, for me, it was all about doctrinal. If I believed the Bible at the time, I don't now, but at the time I did, and what we were being taught wasn't according to the Bible. So take that
Yeah.
however you want. Yeah.
We were told that by an elder that old light, like this book
Yes.
here was considered
Yes.
apostate.
Yes. Yeah. I've been told the same. I've been told exactly the same.
How
Yes.
is your literature apostate? That's weird.
Do you know the other thing? I'll just mention this to you. I mean, it's really patronizing. I was told that I had to be like a child.
Oh,
Don't, yeah. When I was asking questions, I was told you're proud and you need to be like a child. And I'm thinking, but don't children ask questions? Pretty sure they do.
no, no, just follow
Yeah,
blindly.
do what you're told. And for years and years, I questioned things, but I always used to sort of, you know, reel my neck back in so as to sort of try and walk the party line and not get in trouble. But eventually, you reach a point in the end where you just think, nah, can't I can't do this anymore. It's making me ill.
Well, a
Got to
lot of
speak.
people just put it in their back of their head and they try not to question things
I,
anymore.
d- I did it for years. I did it for years, Casey, and it makes you ill. It really, eventually, it will break you mentally because your brain is telling you, you don't believe this. You're pretending to believe this, which makes you a liar. And if you don't like liars, you end up not liking yourself. And it just goes, you go round and round in circles. And in the end, you have no self-worth left in the end. Whereas and I appreciate not everyone can make a clean cut, not everyone can, but it is a fact that if you make a clean break and you walk away and you say, look, I do not believe this, and that's the reason I'm not doing this anymore, immediately you feel better.
Yeah,
You
man,
probably don't feel better that everyone's shunning you
no.
and your life's falling apart and you're living in a bedsit or you've got no money or whatever your consequences are. But certainly from a authentic point of view and your honesty and your integrity, you can kind of smile at yourself when you look in the mirror and think, yeah, I'm not pretending anymore. I'm being honest.
And at least there is a weight lifted off your shoulders.
There is.
And you don't have all these obligations to attend to now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing since I've left as well. The amount of time I've got. I mean, when I was a regular pioneer for pretty much all my adult life, and I was a bloody good one as well. I used to put in like 100 hours a month.
Wow.
Even when it was only 70, I was like that committed. Um, I was like banging in 100 hours a month, and it's amazing how much other stuff you can do when you've got 100 hours free each month.
Plus, you were an elder.
Plus, well, I was an elder up until 2006 when I was disfellowshipped. When I got reinstated, it took me 5 years before they would like I was a regular pioneer almost straight away when I was reinstated. 6 months in, I was a regular pioneer again. But there was a condition that they wouldn't reappoint me for at least 5 years because I'd been disfellowshipped for apostasy. So they were being very, very careful.
Okay.
So after 5 years, they started sort of saying, we're thinking about using you again. You'll have to go through ministerial servant and elder before you can be an elder again. And I'll be honest, I just wasn't interested at that point. And they kept saying, would you would you consider serving again? I was like, no, I'm really not bothered. Um, I had issues with the fact if I was an elder again, I would probably have to disfellowship people. Didn't like that idea. And also that I'd have to be on the platform teaching things I didn't agree with anymore. So there was a bit of that going on. Um, and that was sort of ongoing for about 5 years. Mental health wasn't great either during that time, because of the cognitive dissonance. The ironic thing, Casey, is the week I got disfellowshipped, um, was the week the circuit overseer was coming, and I was actually going to be reappointed. I'd already been told in advance that I was going to be reappointed directly as an elder. They weren't going to make me go through ministerial servant. Um, I was in a different congregation, and by then it had sort of come out that my first disfellowshipping was a kangaroo court, and it should have never happened. But yeah, that week is the week that I just imploded mentally, and I saw a way out of my marriage, and I took it. And when the circuit overseer arrived to reappoint me as an elder, he says, "Where's Daniel?" And the body of elders just said to him, "We've just disfellowshipped him."
Yeah.
Uh,
Crazy.
and it's like, I mean, this is what I mean. It's when you're pretending, and you're eventually everything just comes crap. Don't pretend, folks. That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Don't pretend. Just be honest, because it catches up with you eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for sharing your
you're very
story
welcome.
and on like mostly like you said, it was just um the
Doctrines.
numerology, yeah,
Yeah.
all the dates and all not
Yeah.
adding up. And
Makes your mind go.
yeah,
The reason it does that is it's not true.
right. Not
It's all
true.
nonsense. True.
I can't explain 1914. I mean,
Well, you shouldn't be able to because it's not true.
yeah, I always had trouble with that. Never could explain it. I can
Yeah,
now that I know
yeah,
what's really
yeah.
going on.
It's not that you're thick. It's not that you're thick. It's not true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. And I will make sure and let everybody know about your book.
Thank you very much, Casey. Been a pleasure talking to you again.
Okay, thanks.
Bye
Bye.
for now. Bye.
So, thanks, Daniel, for sharing your story today and realizing that you were in a high control religious group. You did your research and you couldn't continue living the lie. So, and anyone who wants to get their copy of his book, Believing the Lie by Daniel Torridon, can get it on Amazon. So thank you all for joining my channel today. Stay tuned for more information and interviews, and feel free to let me know if you would like to be interviewed. You can email me and stay tuned for more, and we will see you soon.